They say revenge is a dish best served cold. But I prefer mine scalding hot with a side of their biggest client walking out the door. 3 weeks ago, I was just another face in the corporate machine at Meridian Financial Solutions. Today, I'm the woman who single-handedly cost them $50 million and counting. My name is Jessica Carter. And this is the story of how I turned my boss's condescending laughter into the most expensive mistake of his career. It started on a Thursday morning that seemed ordinary enough. I was reviewing quarterly reports in my corner office when Marcus Hamilton, our vice president of client relations, strutted in with his usual air of superiority. At 42, Marcus had the kind of smile that made you want to check your wallet afterward and the moral compass of a broken GPS. "Jessica," he announced, dropping into the chair across from my desk without invitation. "Good news about your bonus." I looked up from my computer screen, cautiously optimistic. I'd been with Meridian for 6 years, working my way up from junior analyst to senior account director. This past year had been particularly stellar. I'd brought in 3 major clients, streamlined our reporting processes, and personally managed the Blackstone Industries account that was worth more than most small countries' GDP. "What's the number?" I asked, setting down my coffee. Marcus's grin widened. 10% of your base salary. Congratulations." I blinked. 10%? That's right. $12,000. Not bad for a year's work, right? The words hit me like a physical blow. $12,000. I'd generated over $15 million in revenue for the company this year alone. The Blackstone account I managed brought in $50 million annually. Junior analysts were getting bonuses in the same range. "Marcus," I said carefully, "I think there might be a mistake. My performance metrics show I exceeded every target by at least 30%. His laugh was sharp and dismissive. "Come on, Jessica. Let's be realistic here. You're good at what you do. But you're not exactly executive material. The big bonuses go to the people who make the real decisions." He leaned back in his chair, completely relaxed. "Besides, you should be grateful. Some people aren't getting bonuses at all this year." I felt my face flush. Grateful, I brought in the Blackstone contract. That's $50 million in annual revenue. And who do you think negotiated the terms? Who do you think presented to the board? Marcus's voice took on a patronizing tone. "You did the paperwork, Jessica. The real work happens above your pay grade." The paperwork? 6 months of building relationships, understanding their business model, crafting proposals, and countless 18-hour days reduced to paperwork. "I see," I said quietly. "Good, I'm glad we understand each other." Marcus stood up, straightening his tie. "Keep up the good work. Maybe next year you'll crack 15,000. He was almost at the door when he paused and turned back. "Oh, and Jessica? Let's keep this between us. No need to get the other staff all worked up about compensation details." After he left, I sat in my office staring at the wall for a long time. The numbers kept spinning in my head. $12,000. 0.024% of the revenue I generated. I'd seen the bonus reports last year when I'd helped HR with their audit. Marcus had received a bonus of $200,000. Our CEO, David Thornton, had walked away with $500,000. I thought about my apartment with its leaky faucet that I couldn't afford to fix properly. About the vacation I'd been planning for 2 years but kept postponing. About the student loans that seemed to multiply like rabbits despite my payments. But it wasn't really about the money. It was about the casual dismissal. The assumption that I should be grateful for scraps. The way Marcus had laughed as if my contribution was some kind of joke. I opened my laptop and began to type. That evening, I found myself in O'Malley's, a dive bar 3 blocks from the office. It was the kind of place where the whiskey was cheap and the conversations were cheaper. I was nursing my second bourbon when a familiar voice interrupted my brooding. "Well, if it isn't the hardest working woman in corporate America." I turned to find Daniel Morrison sliding onto the bar stool next to me. Daniel was senior vice president at Apex Strategic Partners, Meridian's biggest competitor. We'd known each other for years, having worked together at Morrison & Associates before both moving to different firms. He was one of the few people in this industry I actually respected. Danny, I said, managing a smile. What brings you to this particular den of iniquity? Same thing as you, I'd guess. Drowning my sorrows in bottom-shelf bourbon. He signaled the bartender. Though you look like you've got more sorrows than usual. Just the usual corporate nonsense. I took another sip. You know how it is. Actually, I don't. Not anymore. Daniel's drink arrived, and he raised it in a mock toast. Just got word that we're poaching 3 more clients from Meridian this quarter. Your old boss Marcus is apparently making some interesting decisions over there. I nearly choked on my bourbon. What kind of decisions? The kind that make clients nervous. Word is he's been cutting corners on service delivery, pushing for higher fees without justification. Classic short-term thinking. Daniel studied my face. You look like you've got something on your mind. I considered my words carefully. Hypothetically, if someone at Meridian was feeling undervalued, what would Apex's position be on, say, senior talent acquisition? Daniel's eyes sharpened. Hypothetically, Apex is always interested in proven performers, especially those with established client relationships. He pulled out his business card and slid it across the bar. Hypothetically, of course. I pocketed the card. Of course. The next morning, I arrived at the office with a new sense of purpose. I had 3 weeks of vacation time saved up, and I decided it was time to use it. But first, I had some research to do. I spent the day quietly documenting everything, every client interaction, every successful negotiation, every process improvement I'd implemented. I copied files to my personal drive, careful to take only information that was mine to begin with or publicly available. I wasn't interested in corporate espionage, just in building a case for my own value. The Blackstone Industries file was particularly interesting. I'd been their primary contact for 2 years, and our relationship had grown beyond professional courtesy into genuine mutual respect. Thomas Blackstone, the company's founder, had specifically requested to work with me on multiple occasions. His last email had been particularly telling. Jessica, you're the only reason we're still with Meridian. Your attention to detail and genuine care for our business is rare in this industry. I made a mental note to follow up on that. Over the next week, I began having casual conversations with my key clients. Nothing direct, nothing that could be construed as poaching, just friendly check-ins, making sure they were happy with their service, addressing any concerns they might have. The feedback was illuminating. 3 clients mentioned being frustrated with recent fee increases that hadn't been properly explained. 2 others expressed concern about response times on their requests. One specifically asked if I would be staying with Meridian long-term, saying they'd heard rumors about staff turnover. Meanwhile, I was having longer conversations with Daniel Morrison. Apex Strategic Partners was everything Meridian wasn't. Lean, responsive, focused on client success rather than quarterly profit margins. Their compensation structure was merit-based, their bonus system transparent, and their company culture actually valued the people who generated results. The more I learned about Apex, the more I realized how toxic my current environment had become. It wasn't just Marcus's condescending attitude or the insulting bonus. It was the entire system that treated employees as expendable resources rather than valuable assets. On Friday afternoon, I made my decision. I called Daniel and arranged a meeting for the following Monday. Then I drafted my resignation letter, dated it 3 weeks out, and saved it to my desktop. I wasn't quite ready to submit it yet, but having it written felt like taking back control. The weekend gave me time to think and plan. I researched Apex's client base, studied their service offerings, and prepared for what I knew would be a life-changing conversation. Monday morning arrived gray and drizzly, matching my mood as I walked into the Apex offices downtown. The difference was immediately apparent, where Meridian's lobby was all marble and intimidation. Apex had warm wood paneling and comfortable seating. The receptionist greeted me by name and offered real coffee instead of the swill we served at Meridian. Daniel met me in a conference room with glass walls overlooking the city. He'd brought Patricia Chen, their managing director, and James Rodriguez, their head of client development. Both had done their homework on my background and came prepared with specific questions about my experience and client relationships. "We're not looking to poach clients," Patricia made clear from the start. "We're looking to hire exceptional talent and trust that clients will follow naturally if they're receiving superior service." That said, James added, "we understand that client relationships are built on personal trust and professional competence. If those clients chose to follow you to Apex, we'd certainly welcome their business." The conversation lasted 3 hours. We discussed compensation, benefits, company culture, and growth opportunities. The base salary they offered was 30% higher than what I was making at Meridian. The bonus structure was transparent and performance-based, with no artificial caps or subjective evaluations. But what really sold me was their client philosophy. At Meridian, clients were revenue sources to be maximized. At Apex, they were partners to be served. The difference wasn't just semantic, it was fundamental. "We'd like to offer you the position of Senior Director of Client Relations," Patricia said as we wrapped up. "You'd have your own team, discretionary authority up to $2 million, and a direct line to the executive committee." "When would you need an answer?" I asked. "Take all the time you need," Daniel said. "But we'd love to have you start as soon as possible." I walked back to Meridian with my head spinning. The offer was everything I'd dreamed of and more. But accepting it meant burning bridges, potentially damaging professional relationships, and walking away from 6 years of building my reputation. Then I remembered Marcus's laugh, his casual dismissal of my contributions, his assumption that I should be grateful for scraps. I spent the rest of the day in client meetings, paying special attention to the conversations. By 5 o'clock, I had a clear picture of which clients were truly satisfied with Meridian's service and which were staying out of habit or inertia. That evening, I called Patricia Chen and accepted the position. The next 2 weeks were a masterclass in professional discretion. I continued my work at Meridian, fulfilling my responsibilities while quietly preparing for my departure. I scheduled final meetings with my key clients, ostensibly to review their accounts and ensure smooth transitions. The conversation with Thomas Blackstone was particularly revealing. "Jessica," he said during our coffee meeting, "I'll be frank with you. We've been considering a change in financial advisors. Nothing against you personally. But the service quality at Meridian has been declining. Higher fees, slower response times, and frankly, we feel like we're being taken for granted." "I understand your concerns," I said carefully. "What would it take to address those issues?" "Honestly, you. You're the only person there who really understands our business. If you weren't our primary contact, we'd have left months ago." He leaned back in his chair. "But I assume you're not going anywhere." "Actually, Thomas, I'm leaving Meridian next week to join Apex Strategic Partners." His eyebrows shot up. "Apex? Daniel Morrison's firm?" "The same. They've offered me a senior position with more authority to actually solve client problems instead of just managing them." Thomas was quiet for a long moment. "You know, we've been thinking about getting a second opinion on our portfolio management. Maybe it's time to have a conversation with Apex about our needs." "That's entirely your decision, Thomas. But if you do decide to explore other options, I'd be happy to facilitate an introduction. I think that would be very valuable." Similar conversations happened with 2 other major clients. I wasn't soliciting their business, merely informing them of my career change and offering to help with transitions. If they chose to follow me to Apex, that was their decision based on their assessment of where they'd receive better service. My last day at Meridian was a Friday. I cleaned out my office, forwarded my personal files to my home email, and prepared for the exit interview with HR. Marcus was in meetings all day, which was probably for the best. I wasn't sure I could trust myself to remain professional. The exit interview was standard corporate boilerplate: reasons for leaving, suggestions for improvement, return of company property. I kept my answers brief and neutral. There was no point in burning bridges unnecessarily. At 5 o'clock, I submitted my resignation letter and walked out of Meridian Financial Solutions for the last time. The following Monday, I started at Apex Strategic Partners. The onboarding process was efficient and welcoming. I was assigned an office with actual windows, introduced to my new team, and given access to the resources I'd need to succeed. My first official act was to schedule introductory meetings with my prospective clients. 3 companies had expressed interest in exploring Apex's services, and I wanted to ensure they received the attention they deserved. The Blackstone Industries meeting was scheduled for Wednesday afternoon. Thomas brought his CFO and head of operations, clearly taking the conversation seriously. I presented Apex's service philosophy, fee structure, and approach to client relationships. Daniel and Patricia joined me for the presentation, demonstrating the collaborative approach that had attracted me to the firm. The question isn't whether we can provide the same services as Meridian, I explained. The question is whether we can provide better service with more transparency and accountability. What does that look like in practical terms? Asked Janet Mills, Blackstone's CFO. It means you have direct access to decision makers, not just account managers. It means fee structures that are transparent and performance-based. It means treating your business as a partnership, not a transaction. Thomas nodded slowly. And what about continuity? We've worked with Jessica for 2 years. She understands our business. Jessica will be your primary contact, Patricia confirmed. But she'll have the full resources of Apex behind her, including direct access to our executive team when needed. The meeting lasted 2 hours. By the end, Thomas had requested a formal proposal for transferring Blackstone's entire portfolio to Apex Strategic Partners. That evening, I was working late when my phone rang. Marcus Hamilton's name appeared on the screen. Jessica, he said without preamble, we need to talk. Hello, Marcus. What can I do for you? You can explain why Thomas Blackstone just called David Thornton to inform him that they're terminating their relationship with Meridian. I felt a surge of satisfaction but kept my voice neutral. I imagine they weren't happy with the service they were receiving. Cut the act, Jessica. You poached them. You used your relationship with Blackstone to steal our biggest client. I didn't steal anything, Marcus. I informed Thomas that I was changing jobs, as professional courtesy dictated. If Blackstone chose to follow me to Apex, that's their business decision based on their assessment of where they'll receive better service. This is corporate espionage. We'll sue you in Apex for everything you're worth. Good luck with that. I didn't take any proprietary information, didn't violate any non-compete agreements, and didn't solicit clients. I simply informed them of my career change and offered to help with transitions. If they chose to seek services elsewhere, that's their right as consumers. There was a long pause. You've made a serious mistake, Jessica. This industry is smaller than you think. Word gets around. You're right, Marcus. Word does get around. Maybe that's something you should consider. I hung up and returned to my work. An hour later, Daniel knocked on my office door. Heard you had an interesting phone call, he said, settling into the chair across from my desk. Marcus wasn't happy about losing Blackstone. I bet. $50 million in annual revenue is hard to replace. Daniel smiled. Though I heard from Patricia that 2 other companies are also requesting proposals. Meridian's loss is Apex's gain. Speaking of which, David Thornton called me directly about an hour ago. Apparently, he's concerned about corporate rating and wants to discuss the situation. I looked up from my computer. What did you tell him? I told him the truth, that we hired you based on your qualifications and track record, not as part of some scheme to poach clients. If their clients are following you to Apex, maybe they should ask themselves why. And how did he respond? He threatened legal action. I suggested he might want to focus on understanding why they lost 3 major clients in 1 week instead of looking for someone to blame. 3 major clients. I'd known about Blackstone and suspected 1 other, but 3 was better than I'd hoped. Which was the third? I asked. Meridian Industrial Group. Apparently, they were already considering a change and your departure was the final straw. I knew Meridian Industrial Group. They'd been frustrated with fee increases and service delays for months. I'd tried to address their concerns internally, but had been overruled by Marcus, who insisted they were locked into their contract and had no choice but to accept the new terms. How much revenue total? I asked. Roughly 75 million annually. Plus there are 2 more companies that have requested meetings for next week. I leaned back in my chair, processing the numbers. In 1 week, I'd helped Apex acquire clients worth $75 million annually. At Meridian, I'd been told I wasn't executive material and should be grateful for a $12,000 bonus. There's something else, Daniel continued. Patricia wants to discuss your compensation package. Given the revenue you've brought in, she feels the original offer was conservative. The original offer was already generous. Maybe, but Patricia believes in paying people what they're worth. She's proposing a revised base salary with a signing bonus and equity participation in the firm. I stared at him. Equity participation? 5%, vesting over 4 years. Based on current valuations, that's worth about $2 million. $2 million. More than I'd made in my entire career at Meridian. There's a catch, isn't there? No catch. Just recognition that exceptional performance deserves exceptional compensation. Daniel stood up. Think about it over the weekend. We can discuss details on Monday. That weekend, I found myself back at O'Malley's. But this time, I wasn't drowning my sorrows. I was celebrating. The bartender, a grizzled man named Murphy who'd been working there since the Clinton administration, noticed my improved mood. Whatever happened to you this week, you should bottle it and sell it, he said, refilling my glass. Just some positive changes at work. Must be some changes. You look like you won the lottery. In a way, I'd won the lottery of self-respect, of professional recognition, of being valued for my actual contributions rather than being dismissed as disposable. My phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. This is Thomas Blackstone. Just wanted to thank you for the introduction to Apex. Looking forward to working with you in your new role. I smiled and typed back. Thank you, Thomas. I'm looking forward to it as well. Monday morning brought a call from Patricia Chen about the revised compensation package. The numbers were even better than Daniel had suggested. The base salary increase, signing bonus, and equity participation represented a total package worth nearly 3 times what I'd been making at Meridian. There's one more thing, Patricia said as we finalized the details. We're creating a new position, Vice President of Client Development. The role would involve building our client acquisition strategy and managing our highest value relationships. Interested? Very interested. Good. We'll announce it internally this week and formally next Monday. Vice President. At 34, I'd achieved a title that had seemed impossible just weeks earlier. The same title that Marcus Hamilton held, but with actual authority and resources to back it up. That afternoon, I received an email from David Thornton's assistant requesting a meeting to discuss professional transition matters. I declined politely, suggesting any communication should go through Apex's legal department. The next few weeks blurred together in a whirlwind of client meetings, strategic planning sessions, and team building. Apex's culture was everything I'd hoped for and more. Decisions were made collaboratively, information was shared transparently, and success was measured by client satisfaction rather than short-term profit maximization. The 3 clients who'd followed me from Meridian were thriving under Apex's approach. Response times were faster, fees were more reasonable, and the quality of service was demonstrably superior. Word began to spread through the industry grapevine about the Apex advantage. 2 months after my departure from Meridian, I received an unexpected phone call from Jennifer Walsh, a former colleague who'd stayed behind. Jessica, I hope you don't mind me calling. I got your number from Daniel Morrison's assistant. Not at all. Jennifer, how are things at Meridian? Honestly, not great. 3 more clients have left since you departed, and morale is at an all-time low. Marcus is blaming everyone except himself, and David Thornton is talking about restructuring the entire client services division. I'm sorry to hear that. Actually, I'm calling because I'm thinking about making a change myself. Would you be willing to have coffee and discuss opportunities at Apex? I smiled. I'd be happy to, but I should mention that we're very selective about our hiring. We only bring in people who share our client-first philosophy. I understand. And honestly, after working with Marcus for 6 months, I'm ready for a change in philosophy. We scheduled lunch for the following week. Jennifer wasn't the only one reaching out. 3 other former colleagues had made similar inquiries, all citing frustration with Meridian's direction and leadership. The talent exodus was apparently accelerating. Marcus's management style, which had always been problematic, had become actively destructive in the wake of losing major clients. He was micromanaging everything, second-guessing decisions, and creating an atmosphere of fear and resentment. Meanwhile, Apex was thriving. We'd added 8 new clients in 3 months, including 2 who'd specifically sought us out based on our reputation for client service. The firm's revenue was up 40% year over year. And we were looking at expanding our office space. My own success had been recognized with another promotion. I was now Senior Vice President of Client Development, with a team of 12 professionals and responsibility for the firm's largest accounts. The equity participation package had been enhanced as well, bringing my total compensation to levels I'd never imagined possible. But the real satisfaction came from the work itself. At Meridian, I'd been a cog in a machine designed to extract maximum fees from clients. At Apex, I was a partner in building long-term relationships that benefited everyone involved. The contrast was never more apparent than during a year-end review meeting with Thomas Blackstone. "Jessica," he said, "I want you to know that moving to Apex was the best financial decision we made this year. Your team's recommendations have saved us over $2 million in unnecessary fees and improved our portfolio performance by 15%. That's what we're here for, Thomas. Your success is our success." It's more than that, though. At Meridian, we always felt like we were being managed rather than advised. Here, we feel like partners. That evening, I was working late when my phone rang. The caller ID showed Marcus Hamilton's name. I considered letting it go to voicemail, but curiosity got the better of me. "Hello, Marcus." "Jessica." His voice was different, less arrogant than I remembered. "I hope I'm not interrupting anything important. What can I do for you?" I wanted to call and, well, to apologize. For the way I treated you. For the things I said. I've had some time to think about what happened, and I realize I made some serious mistakes. I waited for him to continue. "Meridian has lost 7 major clients in the past 6 months. 3 of them specifically cited your departure as a factor in their decision to leave. David Thornton is talking about replacing the entire client services team." "I'm sorry to hear that." "Are you? Really?" I considered the question. Was I sorry that Marcus was facing consequences for his poor leadership? Was I sorry that Meridian was struggling after treating their employees as expendable resources? "I'm sorry that it took losing clients for you to recognize there was a problem," I said finally. "I'm sorry that good people are going to lose their jobs because of poor management decisions. But I'm not sorry that actions have consequences." "I deserve that." He paused. "Look, I know this is awkward, but I wanted to ask if you'd be willing to meet with David Thornton. He's looking for ways to rebuild the client services division, and your name keeps coming up." "Marcus, I appreciate the call, but I'm not interested in returning to Meridian. I'm happy where I am." "I understand, but would you be willing to meet with him anyway? Maybe provide some insight into what went wrong?" I thought about it. There was something appealing about the idea of David Thornton, who'd signed off on my insulting bonus, asking for my advice on how to fix the problems his company had created. "I'll consider it," I said. "But any meeting would have to be on neutral ground, and I'd want to bring a colleague from Apex." "I'll pass that along. And Jessica? For what it's worth, I was wrong about you. You are executive material. You proved that by building something better instead of just complaining about what was wrong." After he hung up, I sat in my office thinking about the conversation. Marcus's apology had sounded genuine, but it was too little, too late. The damage had been done, not just to our professional relationship, but to dozens of other employees who'd been devalued and dismissed. The meeting with David Thornton never happened. His assistant called the next week to postpone indefinitely, citing scheduling conflicts. I suspected the real reason was that he'd realized asking for help from the woman he'd insulted with a laughably small bonus would be admitting failure too publicly. Instead, I received word through industry contacts that Meridian was bringing in an expensive consulting firm to revitalize their client services approach. The irony wasn't lost on me. They were paying consultants hundreds of thousands of dollars to tell them what their own employees could have told them for free. As the year ended, I found myself reflecting on the journey from that humiliating Thursday morning in Marcus's office to my current position as senior vice president at one of the city's most respected financial services firms. The numbers told part of the story. My compensation had increased by over 300%. My professional status had jumped from middle management to senior executive. My client portfolio had grown from a handful of accounts to responsibility for the firm's most valuable relationships. But the real victory was personal. I'd proven to myself that I didn't have to accept being undervalued or dismissed. I'd demonstrated that exceptional performance deserved exceptional recognition. Most importantly, I'd shown that there was an alternative to the toxic culture that dominated too much of corporate America. The revenge I'd taken on Marcus Hamilton and Meridian Financial Solutions wasn't about spite or vindictiveness. It was about proving that their assumptions about my worth were wrong. It was about showing that clients would follow superior service wherever they found it. It was about demonstrating that companies who treated their employees as disposable resources would eventually pay the price. The final chapter of the story came 6 months later, when I received a LinkedIn notification that Marcus Hamilton had left Meridian Financial Solutions to join a small regional firm in another state. His departure announcement was brief and generic, thanking his colleagues for their support and wishing the company well. There was no mention of his role in losing dozens of millions in client revenue, no acknowledgement of the management failures that had driven away talented employees, no reflection on the lessons learned from treating people as expendable resources. But the market had delivered its verdict. Meridian's stock price had declined by 20% over the year. They'd announced layoffs in 3 departments. Industry publications had written articles about their client retention challenges and cultural issues. Meanwhile, Apex Strategic Partners had been named one of the city's best places to work by the local business journal. Our client satisfaction scores were the highest in the industry. Our employee retention rate was over 90%. I was profiled in the same business journal as one of the city's rising stars under 40. The article mentioned my role in building Apex's client development strategy and my success in attracting high-value accounts. It described my management philosophy as client-first, employee-focused, and results-driven. There was no mention of Meridian or Marcus Hamilton. They had become irrelevant to my story. The morning the article was published, I arrived at my office to find a congratulatory note from Patricia Chen on my desk. "Your success is a testament to the power of recognizing and rewarding excellence," she'd written. "Thank you for choosing Apex as the place to build your career." I smiled and added the note to my file of career mementos, right next to a copy of the resignation letter I'd submitted to Meridian nearly a year earlier. The phone rang, interrupting my reminiscence. It was Thomas Blackstone, calling to discuss expanding his company's relationship with Apex. "Jessica," he said, "I wanted to thank you again for introducing us to Apex. This partnership has been transformative for our business." "That's wonderful to hear. Thomas, what can we do for you today?" "Actually, I wanted to discuss bringing 2 of our subsidiary companies into the Apex family. Based on our experience, I can't imagine working with anyone else." I opened my calendar to schedule a meeting. As I did, I reflected on the journey that had brought me to this moment. From a humiliating conversation about a 10% bonus to a corner office where I was building something meaningful and sustainable. The revenge I'd taken on Marcus Hamilton and Meridian Financial Solutions was complete. But it wasn't really about them anymore. It was about proving that there was a better way to do business, a better way to treat employees, and a better way to serve clients. They say revenge is a dish best served cold. But sometimes, the best revenge is simply building something better and watching your former tormentors realize what they lost when they chose to undervalue you. As I scheduled the meeting with Thomas Blackstone's subsidiary companies, I couldn't help but smile. The woman who'd been told she should be grateful for scraps was now managing relationships worth hundreds of millions of dollars. And Marcus Hamilton, who'd laughed at my 10% bonus, was working at a regional firm in another state, probably wondering how everything had gone so wrong. The answer was simple. He'd made the mistake of underestimating someone who refused to accept being undervalued. And in the end, that mistake had cost him everything while building my career into something I'd never imagined possible. Justice, it turned out, was indeed a dish best served hot, with a side of professional success and a garnish of poetic irony. The best part? This was just the beginning.